Okay, we can go ahead and get started now. Thank you, everybody.
All right. We good? Woohoo. Okay, folks. So thank you everyone for being here today. So I'm Corey Connor. I'm from Leeward Community College. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us today and to learn more about how you can write an effective resume and get yourselves ready for our first ever virtual career fair. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce, this is a listing here of all 7 community college campuses who are hosting this virtual career fair that we're going to be having on September 17th. And these are a listing of the campus representatives in addition to their office name. So if you would like to get more help, we will be putting up the information for each prospective campus in the chat box as well. But these are some, this is just a listing of all the 7 community college campuses that are putting on this virtual career fair. So I'm happy to introduce to you these folks here. We have Carol from Honolulu CC. We have Sue from Kapiolani, myself from Leeward, Justin Ha'a from Windward Community College. We have Julie Patel from Maui College. We have Christine Quintana from Hawaii Community College, and lastly, Melissa Henry with Kauai Community College. So huge shout out to my colleagues. Okay, so we're gonna move forward. We're gonna talk today about what you're gonna learn. And so these are some of the things that I'll be covering in today's webinar. Today, I'm gonna be talking to you about different resume types. We're gonna learn how to structure your resume based on your current skills and your experiences. I will also be providing you with resume tips. We'll go over some resume appearance do's and don'ts. We'll talk about references as well. And so with that, we're gonna talk about who you can reach out to for a reference, what kind of information you'll need to gather for these individuals. I'll also be going over resume formatting and content. And then lastly, we're gonna learn how to tailor your resume to a specific job description. So it's a lot of information. I'm gonna try and consolidate that in the next 40, 45 minutes or so, give or take. So just bear with me. Okay. So usually when I do these workshops, I like to put up these quick pop quizzes, right? And so here's one for you today. So when can you use a resume? So is it 1, to apply for a job or internship, 2, to submit with a scholarship application, or 3, to share with a reference, or 4, all of the above? So it's just a pop quiz. So I'll give you guys some time to think about that. And then I'll put up the answer for you all. Okay, so if you've answered number 4, you're correct. Woo! So it's all of the above, right? Definitely you can use your resume, right? And also for additional things as well. So anytime you want to communicate, brief information to someone, maybe even if you're applying for volunteer work, again, it's always good to submit a resume. Next, we're going to talk about resume writing tips. And there's a lot, but I kind of tried to consolidate some of the important ones that I felt were relevant. And I wanted to share that with you folks today. So the first one is to look for keywords, right, in the job posting. And so when writing your resume, it's always good to have the job description for the job that you want to apply for, have that in front of you, right? Do your job search, print out the job description and have that in front of you, right? And as you're working on your resume, you're going to want to go through that job description and kind of highlight, right, all these keywords that kind of stand out to you, in addition to some of the things that you might already have, right? So if you're going through the job description and you notice that you already have those specific skills, those are things that you want to make sure you highlight. The highlighted items are the things that you want to make sure you include in your resume, right? For sure, because these are relevant things that are applicable to the position that you're applying for. Okay. Next is review your resume examples related to the industry that you're applying for. And so this is where I'm going to use Jerome's help. I want him to, he's going to go ahead and type in, there's a link that we have called the Hawaii Career Explorers. And so again, right, the internet is a great way to look up different resume examples that are related to the industry that you're looking at applying to. And so you can also Google, right? For example, if you're interested in teaching, right, you can Google, teaching resumes, and a whole bunch of different, teaching resumes will come up. But the UH system has a site called the Hawaii Career Explorers, and I wanted to share that resource with you all today because in that site, it does feature a listing of resumes that are related to a whole bunch of different industries. And so you can go through whatever industry you're interested in, and you can actually pull up some sample resumes. So that is a free resource that's available to you. Use a professional font, right? That's the next one. So any font I would recommend, guys, that's easy to read, right? So things like Times New Roman, Calibri, just something that's easy to read and not very distracting to the eye is something that I would recommend. Update your voice mailbox greeting and also your email address. Okay, so this is super important, folks. So use a professional email address, right? If you don't have one, now's the time that I highly recommend that you go and create, like, open up a Gmail or a professional email that you can use, right, for when you're applying for jobs. Okay, so using your first name and the first initial of your last name or something is, considered professional, right? And again, this is because, right, these little things can create a lasting impression, right? And especially when you're applying for jobs, you don't want the employer to have or automatically make a first impression of you when they haven't even gotten a chance to meet you yet. And so one way that you can create a good first impression is to create a professional email. Okay. In addition to your voice mailbox on your cell phone, right? So updating your voice mailbox screening, right? Removing things that might be distracting. So like those songs playing in the background, right? I would remove those and maybe replace it with a professional standard voice mailbox greeting, or if you have a professional one that you've created, definitely you can use that. Okay. Also, if your voice mailbox is full, right? Be sure to go through that and get it cleaned out and also set up, right? So this way employers can leave you a message, right? So if they're trying to connect with you, to set up an interview, a date and time, you want them to be able to contact you, right? Because you would hate to have missed that opportunity. Okay. You also want to use strong action verbs to really describe what you did in your resume. We'll kind of go over this a little bit more into the workshop, but definitely using strong action verbs to describe what you did in your position is very important as well. And of course, proofread and edit. Okay, and we'll go over those last two a little bit more in depth throughout this presentation. Okay, so the next slide here is resume appearance don'ts. So these are some things that you don't want, okay? Okay, so first is photocopying, right? Typically you wanna submit a neat, professional, easy to read resume that's really gonna grab the reader's attention, right? That's your overall goal. And so the purpose of the resume is to get noticed, right? And the way that it works is that, employers are probably receiving, right, like hundreds of resumes a day. And so really the average time that they're actually looking at your resume is probably less than 10 seconds. And so in those critical moments, right, you really want the resume to be able to spark the employer's interest, right? So that they want to meet you, they want to learn more about you, they want to see how your skills are going to benefit their company or organization, and they want to call you in for an interview. So whether or not you're applying for an entry-level position, executive position, definitely always having an organized, concise, and easy to read resume is a must, right? And these are just some tips that I wanted to give you all today, so that you can keep this in mind as you're going through and doing your resume, okay? So for sure, colorful paper, multiple colors, strange fonts, everything in all caps, uneven margins, and very last, your name very, very, very large. Okay. So I tell students, it's not about, putting your contact information at the top, like in 48-point font, right? But it's about the content of your resume, what you have in there, you know, and all the great things that you've done, right? Okay. So a couple of more resume content don'ts, being too vague or not descriptive enough, right? So don't limit yourself. When it comes down to listing all of the great things that you've done, in my opinion, especially if it's relevant, the more things that you can include in there, the better, right? So remember to add in all those details and really explain how you completed those tasks or skills versus just listing them down, because that's what the employer is looking for, right? How you've done it, not just listing down what you did, but how you did it, right? And how it aligns to the position, right, that you're trying to apply for. Incomplete, missing information, right? So if you have been taking courses, right, you want to include all those things. So include all the courses that you've taken, any kind of certification or training or skills that you've learned. Don't leave these things out, right? Many people think that a resume should only include work experience. But however, you'll want to also consider listing down what you've learned along the way. So if it's a skill that you use on the job, remember to include them, right? These are important details that can make a huge difference. And you might not have all the related job experience at the time of the application, but for some employers, they might substitute that, right? So your education and your training might substitute for some of that. So, give yourself some of that credit and list down maybe classes that you've taken. Okay. Don't lie, right? All this information that you include in your document can be discussed, right, in an interview. And so you want to be sure that things that you're putting on your resume, that you're comfortable and you're confident talking about that, right? And just know that employers can also use that information, right, to kind of ask you more questions, to maybe ask you, to have you elaborate, right, on things that you have wrote down in your document. So an example of this could be, right, say in your resume, you put down that you've worked with Microsoft Excel and you're proficient. So they might ask you, right? So I see in your past job, you were office assistant at Leeward Community College, you're proficient in Microsoft Excel. Can you, tell us a little bit more? Like, how did you use this tool in the office, right? So again, you're going to want to be prepared to talk about those things, right? And share with the employer how you utilize that tool. Okay. Avoid acronyms without spelling them out first. Okay, so if you need to use an acronym, right, just make sure you spell that out first so that the employer can understand what it is that you're talking about. Okay, so you can use abbreviations and acronyms when appropriate. However, you must always remember to make sure that it's clear to the reader, right? And so if you're not sure, make sure you spell that out, right? So like for me at Leeward Community College, the office I work in is called Job Prep Services, and we're always saying JPS, right? We shorten it. And so, I want to make sure that it's clear that students know what that stands for, right? So if you spell that out for them, it makes it a little bit easier, right, for us to understand as the reader. And then lastly is don't include personal information. So, anything like your social security number or your marital status, again, those are things that you do not need to disclose in your resume, okay? So next, we're gonna take a look at a resume that can use some improvement, but we're gonna take a look at that together. So as I'm just gonna give us a couple of seconds here to look at this resume and kind of just pull out some things based on what we've talked about so far, and what you notice about this resume. So as we're looking at this resume here, we can see that it could use some improvement. Mind you that I was trying to fit everything into this PowerPoint slide too. So, but a couple of things that I wanted to just point out, for sure, right, is a colorful paper, right? So usually I would recommend, students to use, like a beige, white, your standard color paper, right? The font of the header, right? It's a little distracting to the reader. The objective statement, which we're going to talk about a little bit more into this presentation, is not written well, right? There is an unprofessional email address. The description for the work functions are also lacking. Under education, they took classes, right? Took classes for a semester, right? So that's, informal, right? We want to maybe, we could have put down how many credits the students successfully completed, right? And little details I know make a huge difference, but at the very bottom under references, it says will be provided if applicable, and there's 2 periods. So again, we talked about spell check and proofreading. So little details that can make a big difference, right? We just want to be mindful of that. And then for sure, like the margins, the indents, and the spaces, right? So that's just an example. Next, I wanted to talk to you all about the different types of a resume. Okay. So I'm going to go over the 3 types of resume styles today with you. So we're going to start with the chronological resume. Okay. So your chronological resume is the most common, right? The most common type of resume. It's the easiest to create. This resume organizes your information in reverse chronological order. So starting with your most recent experience and then working your way backwards. The benefit of using this style of resume is that employers are comfortable with it and it's fairly easy to create. Okay. The next one I'm going to talk about is a functional resume. So unlike the chronological resume, a functional resume lists no dates. The focus is on your skills and also your abilities, right? Not necessarily your sequential education and or work histories, but the advantage of doing this style of resume is that you are telling the employer exactly what your strengths are, rather than having to read through all of your job duties and figure out what you know. The employer can easily be able to identify where your strengths are. A functional resume takes more time and effort to complete, and you want to make sure that you pick relevant skills to highlight. Employers might also get suspicious when they receive a resume with no dates on it. However, I did want to emphasize and add that moving forward, right, in a COVID-19 era, many employers will understand, right, that there are going to be gaps in employment. And so what I would recommend, right, is to really focus now on your strengths, your skills, and really highlighting on those things, because these are the things that you can use to transfer, right? These are transferable skills that you can take with you to another job, okay? And then lastly is the third type of resume is a combination resume. So it combines the best of both your chronological and your functional style. It identifies and clearly presents skills and abilities of the employer while still including the dates that the employers like to see. And the benefit of using the combination resume is that you can highlight your abilities while minimizing gaps in employment. However, right, sometimes when you're doing this type of resume, it can appear cluttered. So you definitely want to make sure that you're, keeping the formatting consistent when you're doing these types of resumes. So I'm going to show you now a chronological template. We're going to go through this together, because the first step is you want to decide, right, which style of which resume template best suits your experiences. And so really quickly, this is just a quick example of how you can structure a chronological template. Okay, so you just have your objective, your education, your work experience, honors and awards, and then lastly, your references. Okay. So again, chronological template. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about creating an objective statement. And I have some examples here for you that I wanted to share. So feel free, if you need to use them, you can, by all means, please feel free to do that. Just remember that as you're doing your objective statement, I wanted to emphasize, right, that each resume that you do, you're going to want to customize, right, each of your objective statements based on the job that you're applying for. And so an objective statement, basically, it's a short, brief paragraph explaining, what position you're applying to and where you're applying, right? And then you can also include just 1 to 2 brief sentences explaining why you feel you're a good fit with that company or organization, okay? So basically what you're doing in objective statement is you're just providing your professional goals in a very short paragraph. Okay. So I don't know, I know Carol mentioned earlier that I did, work at with the Department of Education. I wanted to share too that I also started out working as an educational assistant. So some of my examples are tailored to, a teaching type of position, which I kind of still do in my job now, right? Like I teach workshops and do all of that, but that's, my passion. And so I'm sharing this, but I wanted to let you know that I did start out my career working as an educational assistant at Leleho High School. So some fun facts. All right. Okay, so moving forward, earlier I talked about like using your highlighter and looking at the job description, right? So the first step is to do a job search, right? You want to figure out, what kind of job matches up with your skills and your interests. And so when you get that, you're going to want to pull up the job description, use a highlighter, and start highlighting key terms, right, that that fit your experiences. And so here is an example of a job description and the experiences that are required for this position, right? And so again, just going through and highlighting specific key terms, responsibilities that fit your experiences. Here is an example of the educational requirements for this job. And so again, right, a lot of times employers are looking, right, to make sure that you meet the minimum educational requirements when you're applying for the position. But again, I can't emphasize to you more that, even if you're working towards that goal, just list down, some of the classes that you're currently taking or that you've completed, right? You're going to want to give yourself credit for that because obviously you are working towards that goal, right? So don't leave all of that out. Especially now in a COVID-19 era, just know that employers will be looking at that too, right? They will be looking at your education. And so, moving forward, right, these are all changing times and we all need to adapt to the job market the best we can. So it's still recommended that we tailor your resume, right? Most importantly, but again, don't forget to include all of those great things that you've accomplished, right? So relevant classes that you've taken, any kind of experiences that you have, skills, internship, volunteer work, etc. List those things down, right? The important part here is that we, are showing the employer, right, that we're working towards our end goal. Yeah, so you should give yourself credit for all those great things that you're doing. Okay. So that's the educational requirements. And then now we're going to move on to the job duties. So this is for an educational assistant, right? All of this is for educational assistant. Again, here we want to emphasize, right, to use your job duties and see which of those are most relevant. So looking at this, right, you want to think about, right, based on your experiences, your personal experiences, right, have you ever helped a teacher, a counselor, a professor, right? Can you learn quickly? These are some of the questions you're going to want to ask yourself after reading a job description like this, right? Do you know how to type on a computer? Do you do data? Have you done data entry, filing, answering phone calls, right? These are the kinds of things that, you know, this job is requiring, right? So make sure that you tailor and you customize your resume based on this position. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about your related experience. Okay, so normally we would suggest, right, in your work experience that you list down on your resume, which, by the way, I forgot to mention that, you know, I have a lot of students that ask me, you know, does my resume, shouldn't it only be a page, right? And so, you know, now, and this is my opinion, right? I tell students that the more things that you can put in there that are relevant, the better, right? So it's okay if your resume is over a page, right? Because the way the job market is now and the way employers are looking at resumes and screening them, right? They really want to make sure that they're hiring the best fit candidate for that job, right? So the more things that you can add in there to highlight your skills and your abilities, the better. Okay, so when we're talking about work experience, again, you know, we want to go back, you know, usually it's no more than 10 years. Some students have asked, you know, well, what if I don't have a lot of experience, right? So then, of course, you know, we're going to focus on your skill set more, right? If you don't have, right, some students have asked me, you know, what if I don't have all the information, right? What if the business has closed, or you know, I don't know the point of contact any longer, right? I'm not sure who to put down, right? So I usually just tell students to do your best, right? Include whatever information you can for now, okay? But list down all of your formal education, right? A lot of the students I work with, right, they forget to leave out, right, that they're actually attending college now, right? So I'm like, we got to put that, right? We have to put down that you're, you know, enrolled in, you know, Leeward Community College or wherever it is that you are at, right? Put that down. If you recently graduated, right, also include that as well in the appropriate section. And again, list down the functions of your work and be descriptive, right? If you did internships or if you have volunteer work, again, please put all of that down under relevant experience, right, if it's applicable. Okay, so next we're going to talk about honors and awards. So these items here measure your success, right, for that particular goal or achievement. So again, don't leave this part out. We want you to highlight your hard work and achievements because that counts, right? So, you know, even if it's, you know, an award that you got, like student appreciation or student worker of the year award, again, these are all great accomplishments that you can put into your resume. Okay. I'm sorry, that was an honor. So if you had received an honor for being student worker of the year, again, put that in there. And then an award, right? Something that's, you know, given to you, right? Like a scholarship, those kind of things, stipends. Again, you know, put that in there, right? That's huge. And so we don't want you to leave those things out. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about references. And so this is a reference sheet. And so this usually goes in the back of your resume, right? So you want to create a separate reference sheet with a listing of all your references. Again, you're going to want to mirror, right, the same style of your resume, same header, same formatting, same font, all of that. If you're asking, you know, who you can be or who can you list down as your references. So some people that might be good for you to go out and start asking are, you know, people like your counselors, coaches, your mentors, your supervisors, your professors, anyone that can speak about you and your work ethic. Okay, those are great people that you can reach out to. I think now more than ever too, if you haven't established, a good rapport with some of these people, now is a good time, right? That you can start, thinking about, who you can really start asking, right? And giving them a heads up, to let them know, right, in advance, like, is it okay if I list you down as a reference? I'm looking at applying for the student assistant position on my campus. Um, maybe even providing them, right, with the job description and your resume as well, so that when they're called, at least they can really talk about you and speak about your work ethic to that position. You'll want to stay away though from, like your friends and your family members, right? You want to keep it professional. And so, asking some of those people that I mentioned earlier might be a good option. The final check, right? So formatting. You always want to consider, right? Are you going to be passing the 3-pile test? So the 3-pile test is yes, no, maybe. And so the goal is to get you in the yes pile, right? You want to think about, are the font and the sizes, is that appropriate? You want to be concise, right? Um, is the text easy to read, right? We talked about all of that earlier. Are the margins, indents, and spaces and bullet points consistent? And then also, use past or present tense, right, as needed. So if it's use past tense when describing positions that you've held in the past, and then using present tense if you're talking about, current positions that you're including in your document. Okay. All right. And then the final check. So here's the checklist that I kind of just created, for my students really quickly. Um, was and so this is my advice, right, is sometimes I know when I was in the job search process, I was applying to a whole bunch of different jobs, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, right? So now I think what's important is and we have all these great tools, like technology, right, has totally driven us in a whole new direction, right, especially since this COVID-19 thing has started. I mean, personally, I know I haven't been more in touch with technology than I am today, but keeping a log of all the applications, right, that places that you've applied to, right? Nowadays you can just create like a Google folder and kind of create a list, or make an Excel spreadsheet, create a list, right? So you can keep yourself organized. Those are all great ways to help you manage, right? When you applied, have you heard back yet? Do you still need to follow up with the employer? So I think doing something like that is recommended. You can do it electronically, right? Send your resume in a Google Doc. You can have a peer or a family member review it. People can actually go into your document and make comments, and you can see, right? They can comment and give you suggestions and some feedback. So that's a great way to do things. Even though it's gonna, electronically, we can still, get the same job done, right? Make sure you have a professional email address and a voicemail greeting, okay? If you're sending a hard copy, right, of your resume to the employer, if they only accept hard copies, just be sure to use a white or neutral tone color paper. And then if you're sending it via email, make sure that you save your document, and then just send it in a PDF format. Okay. All right. Okay, so this brings us to the end, where I just wanted to kind of put together in a PowerPoint slide, right? A more sort of, not really, but we can help you, right? Make your resume just look more appealing to the employer. And so in a snapshot here, this is something that, some recommendations that we gave to the first email that we looked at during the beginning of this workshop. So it's kind of like a before and after snapshot. And for sure, when you work with your campus career centers, we will work with you to make sure that, your resume is, tailored to the position. We'll make sure that, all of this, that we talked about today, the style, the function, the way that you're writing your job descriptions, right, are all put together and professional. Okay. Okay, so the next steps for you would be to finish building your resume and prepare that for the virtual career fair. You'll want to have another person review it for you, right? You can use an electronic version. Make sure you update your resume too with current information, right? So if you have things in there that are not updated, now is a good time to start getting all that information in there. Save your resume in a safe and secure space online. So you can create separate folders, use a Google Doc. These things all make it easier for you to be able to, keep yourself organized so that when you need to share those documents with employers, at least you have a space that you can, go to where you can easily access those documents. And then lastly is networking. Yeah. So for sure, this whole pandemic makes finding a job even more stressful, right? But the good news is that now more than ever, okay, it's the best time for us to network, right? I think this whole work from home experiences has created a very captive audience for networking. Many people are not traveling as much, right? They're not going to conferences, they're not traveling for business. So, now, there's a lot of employers, right? A lot of people are, staying at home, working from home, which means that they, might more likely be able to, be available, right? And pay attention so that when you're reaching out, with a call or email, they'll have that time, right, to be able to, talk to you about networking opportunities and getting that information out to you. So now more than ever is a great time for you to start networking and building up your employer database. And don't forget to attend our career event, our virtual career fair. It's going to be on Thursday, September 17th. And that's it for me, guys. I wanted to thank you all for attending today's workshop. Thank you for being a great audience. I am going to leave. I think I have about 9 minutes. And so I wanted to take the opportunity